What's up? Every plastic second is like a ring. Every plastic second is like a ring when you're riding the Ferris wheel. And if you're riding the Ferris wheel, then there's lots of rings around you. And every second that passes, that's like an indication. Oh, yeah, it's something similar to being like on a Ferris wheel. Not a Ferris wheel, but one of those merry-go-rounds. Yeah, when you're going around and around and they say to grab the ring. That's what I'm talking about. That's like time. That's when you have, there's so many of those rings that are floating around all the time. And yeah, there's those things are called attention. And they try to grab your attention at all times. It's not the opposite way where you're trying to grab them. It's the opposite, where they're trying to grab you. They're trying to grab your attention necessarily. So you gotta go do the opposite and float the other way in a mental sense. And then try to grab the rings that you want to grab at the times that you want to grab them when you see them in times that pass. Because every couple seconds they tend to refresh. And so it's up to you to be able to just try to continue to refresh those things in your mindset and be able to focus on the rings that matter to you most. And then in that sense, it's also ideal to focus. Yo, what's up? How you doing? Welcome to the news. What's up? Welcome to the news. Welcome to the news. Welcome to the news. Yeah, what's up? So it's also ideal to try to focus and take that mentality and then be able to try to shift that and be able to try to stack different rings, different energies, different things, different ways to build momentum in the same way, in the same focus, in the same frame of reference, so that it's possible to continue to be able to stack energies, using momentum, using the focus of momentum as an essence of attempting to do both. It's reciprocal, it's back and forth, it's vice versa, both are also true. So if you're stacking energies to try to create momentum, and then you get to also use momentum to try to stack energies and create and stack different energies. So yeah, you've got like circles that are like the rings, in essence, on like merry-go-rounds in essence, and they're floating around you at every given second. So you've got the opportunity to use attention, and attention is the whole thing that is able to grab different attention is what you have to do to be able to focus on assets and such things. And those are like circles that are obviously noticeably circular because the rings are circular as well, and there's also conductive electricity, and usually they're made of gold, so that's also a good analogy to focus on for this instance. But as well, in terms of building momentum to try to be able to build a portfolio and have that energy travel around the world, in terms of assets, in terms of developing philanthropy energy, in terms of developing goods, it's also relevant to be able to acknowledge that momentum and stacking energy is necessary to do hand in hand, in essence, because you're trying to stack energy so that it builds momentum and it's able to spread in the fastest time possible, because time is finite in essence and you want to do the most possible the shortest time that you can. So being able to just try to acknowledge what the energy's weight and value and ability to spread like is necessarily when it's combined with other energies, necessarily by being able to just kind of chemically test it and be able to acknowledge what that energy is in the first place. And then if something is similar to other energies, then it has the ability to sort of coalesce. And if things have the ability to coalesce, then they can sort of vibe together and chime together and sound good together and go well together, like business music. In essence, it's kind of like a music thing conceptually, to where you're just trying to focus on what sounds good together in a business music sense. And at the same time, in terms of trying to develop global presence and an ability to be able to spread things far and wide, so that the assets spread far and wide and monetary energy spreads far and wide, that it's ideal that there's momentum that is built off of coalescing energies that are able to stack and be able to grow off of each other, because they're in a similar type of energy in terms of not just like people that correspond to those energies necessarily, but people is relevant because their energy is internal and it's definitely part of it and fluid to every opportunity and every bit of energy that's a circle in essence, like an opportunity that's a circle in essence, so that travels around the world in the best, most fluid way possible. And people are also where that stems from. So stacking energies and momentum are definitely go hand in hand, and stacking energy is very necessary for being able to just try to develop energies in a business sense. That's kind of like a roll-up. If you sell a bunch of businesses that are similar, their prices go for a higher price when they're sold as a package, and that's because that energy has been stacked, and therefore the energy is more powerful when it's sold off as a whole, in essence, in that fashion. Moving on down the line, focusing on assets as a whole. One of the most powerful energy assets, that their energy is the most powerful and meaning the most valuable, is in essence being able to focus on ad spend. Ad spend is the most powerful of all the assets and the asset classes that's out there, because it has the ability to cause the greatest energy expansion in the shortest amount of time, because the energy from being able to buy ad spend is something unlike anything else, because it causes this type of energy that's similar to like energy stacking. In essence, it's like combining monetary energy with energy that's being pushed out into the world in different ways, and the strategies are very uniquely different because in essence it's very necessary for those strategies to be able to coalesce with the private markets, to be able to very uniquely just connect and chime with the markets, to be able to appease them and please them, to be able to be let into the doors of the market, to be able to become friends with the markets, and then be able to grow with the markets and be able to make relationship with the markets and such things. So in essence it's necessary to be able to acknowledge that ad spend is the most powerful way to create not only momentum and ads that are able to make sales and able to connect with the private markets and such things like that, but it's also a matter of being able to acknowledge that energy of using monetary energy to be able to create more monetary energy, in essence, is in an asset sense, in an asset class sense, the most powerful in terms of developing ROAS, in terms of being able to develop return on spend, being able to develop return on investment, the most powerful traditionally out of any other asset class when it works and when it's functional, when it speaks to the right market, the way that the market wants to be spoken to, in essence, in comparison to traditional assets and traditional asset classes, that it's the most powerful, and therefore in combination with trying to be able to develop different energy combinations to be able to make the highest energy, to be able to create the biggest momentum, to be able to make asset stacking so that it works in the highest and the most fluid way possible, that it's relevant to leverage ad spending, to be able to create momentum and energy stacking all at the same time, so that it's possible to continue to percolate energy and circulate energy and continue to make compounding energy, so that things like roll-ups can occur on the backside where assets are stacking on top of each other and the value is growing exponentially, because the value in a monetary reward sense can be matched at a higher value, at the highest value, when all of them are combined and put together into a package, and those become a new thing in of itself, in essence. So yeah, stacking assets, stacking energies is relevant to be able to try to do in a chemical sense and be able to analyze the chemistry. Oh yeah. And yeah, credit stacking is a different element to be able to focus on, but in this sense we're trying to focus on like the game of stacking credit, because it's a similar fashion. It's like in a similar fashion it's a matter of doing chemistry, it's a matter of finding ways and things that in this sense it's kind of like you have something called pretend trading and trade practice trading and trading, with fake money in essence, and that's kind of like what credit stacking is, almost kind of like kind of somewhat, because there's like points that are reverbed from like spending money on money that can then be returned, and then you can pay off the original bill from the money that's being lent out to begin with through credit cards, and that's what credit's all about, is they want to charge you high interest, so it's in essence you can spend it on things and then you can get the money back and then pay it off the credit, and it's kind of like practice investing in a certain sense, because you want to practice that sort of that return, that sending out of money and then returning it, in essence, that monetary energy spinning. So it's kind of like fake trading, but it's like real trading in essence at the same time, so it's also like teaching how to invest in a surreptitious way. Oh yeah, using credit cards, credit stacking in a similar fashion, because it's like just playing with monetary energy in essence, but you want to not lose it, obviously, and you want to keep it contained in a contained system so that it's cyclical and circular, and is also sort of training upon being able to try to grow other energies at the same time, because you can sort of practice little other energies, because you do get rewards for practicing with also using credit stacking at the same time. So being able to practice with other rewards and getting other rewards and little benefits and perks allow you to practice investing in other ways. It's like muscle memory, practicing in that sort of game, the game of investing, which is based around, in this DINKY tech world, the Change for Games interest to be able to create monetary energy using philanthropy energy, and therefore being able to create assets through playing games for change, because this essence of a game is about making actions that are able to cause the results, and hopefully philanthropy energy is an ideal way to be able to connect with that, because it's ultimately philanthropy that's at the core of that, to be able to cause games for change and change for games to be able to make the world a better place. And that's at the nature and the core of every business is philanthropy energy to solve problems. So in essence, we actually have an interest to also make like a card game that's similar to Magic, the type of trading cards, but I mean like real Magic, because we're talking about things that are making real life things to happen that are based off of the game. This whole game that I talked to about global giving games is also a game in of itself, but I mean like more like a credit card game in essence, where we're talking about the game of cards, like the magic cards, but in essence like we're talking about doing that with financial assets that are made in DINKY tech world that are sort of fake, like made out of cryptocurrency in essence, but we're using actual cards, like so they can be used and leveraged in like the sense of like a monetary game. So we're just trying to like conceptualize how to put that together, but it's also using witchcraft. So it's kind of like a combination of witchcraft and credit cards in combination. As I've talked about witchcraft a little bit in the past, oh yeah, we want to try to involve that a little bit more as time goes on as well, like as witches stand for nature, and acknowledging and hiring and flowing with the power of nature in essence, indeed. And yeah, for sure, trying to leverage potions and such things like we're talking about doing just with energy stacking in of itself, because that's exactly what energy stacking is. It's like potions and witchcraft and such things. So we're just trying to create circular conversations in this type of a podcast to be able to, continue to circulate, but also build upon past podcasts and such things to begin with. And also POD stands for print on demand, which is also a big theme in the essence of the TehC deck world. And we're also sort of trying to forecast things by printing on demand, things that are being talked about a little bit if possible, by shadowing them and making shadows of them in essence by these little podcasts, by just POD printing on demand them, by talking about them in essence as a little bit of a print in a fine-grained peculiar world, third world sense, other world sense, alternate world sense, and that's sort of like the witchcraft in essence, in of itself. We're printing and projecting and casting, forecasting and casting like a light on a wall, in essence, like that kind of light on a wall, kind of casting light so that the shadow is only there realistically right now, and that's all we're talking about is the shadow and the shell. In the meantime, we're creating these POD, print on demand, development thoughts in terms of presence and presentations of items that are presenting the foundation for the essence of energy to be able to spin from and span from and spin in between from, so that all is a circular process and energy. And printing on demand, this is what this podcast is doing. It's podcast, PODcast. Yeah, so we're trying to make that game. It's like a credit card game in essence, similar to the credit card gaming game that's done in the real world today anyways. Oh yeah. And then there's also things called infinite loops of energy that are also like infinite, using energy so that it makes infinite loops. And we want to try to do the same thing with monetary energy. It's a similar type of a game that we were just talking about doing with witchcraft. In essence, so we're trying to do that with witchcraft. In essence, with the monetary energy loop and such things. And then, and there are such things. You have to look it up online, do a little bit of a Google search on infinite money loops, just like infinite assets that we talked about in a couple of the podcasts ago. Reference. In essence, yeah. So we're just trying to do that and keep this infinite banking type of mindset in the forefront of time as time goes on, as we make more of these podcasts and such to begin with. We want to make it like the witchcraft type of situation, where you pretend in essence are able to name your own stock market prices, for example, because that's in essence kind of the nature of private markets. In essence, private markets are very similar to what I was just saying about naming your own stock market prices, because things don't equal value. Price doesn't equal value at all in the nature of the real world. In essence, that's what private markets are all about. That's what's exciting about private markets, is to be able to leverage the idea that price does not equal value, and that's how gratitude comes into play. Because if you have gratitude, then necessarily that helps increase the concept of value. And if you don't care about money to begin with because you have gratitude, necessarily, then you can try more things and you can give more things, that you can add more things to the market and just try to sell them necessarily and just see what goes on, because sometimes people's value idea and perception is a little bit different and off necessarily. So you just can play with that. You can play with that mentality and that essence of naming your own stock market price, because in the private markets you can name your own prices in the private markets, because it's not like the public markets, and people don't have an idea necessarily or an understanding of what value is necessarily in the private market. So you can name your own price, you can name your own stock price in the private market, so you have to just have a little bit of justification and such things, a little bit of testimonials in the background backing it up, so there's a little bit of energy in the background. And this is energy stacking in essence in another format, because it's energy stacking in a mindset format, and it's continuing to stack energies in the mindset format, because that in essence, if you're able to name your own stock prices in the stock market, is like the private markets, and it's like black magic that occurs in the private markets, because you can exchange the idea that price does not equal value at all. And especially when things are starting out and when companies are starting out with their stock prices very cheap, especially if they're in the private markets and they have stock prices when they're very cheap, they can exponentially grow in a certain respect. But it's also exponentially useful and interesting to acknowledge the growth upon that when they get even bigger, because that exponential growth continues to grow exponentially as time goes on, which is very exponentially interesting to see, because that value starts so small, and if you buy in when it's super small and then it exponentially grows, then every single exponential growth has exponential growth based on the foundational price. But at the very beginning, when it was extremely small, when you look at it like, starting very small, and you actually look at that and do the math upon when it's growing, when it's exponentially larger, then it's exponentially growing every exponential growth on an exponential scale. And that exponential mentality is in essence what the black magic, in essence mindset, with the witchcraft combined with the credit card game, in essence is intending to try to call upon, in terms of the mentality of calling upon your own stock market, because you just kind of name the energies, and you find energies, and you're able to try to do chemistry and the mentality of doing the math in this way, and try to make value through this process and such things, and make reality come from it on the backside of that. Hopefully I made some sense, and hopefully it does come together in a synergistic way, in the mindset way, and hopefully in this peculiar dinky tech sense, in terms of energy concept development conceptually and such. I guess anyways, thanks again. Bye. Dinky tech now. Bye. For now. Bye. Peace. Bye.